Okay, so I'm going to get started with our introduction and share the slides here in a minute. So thank you all for joining us today. I am Cami Edson with Boulder County. I'm part of the Community Planning and Permitting Transportation Division and run the Youth Transportation Program. And so today you are here and we're going to talk about bike trains and bike and roll and walk to school day, which is coming up in May. And so Ryan, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. We'll just say hi, and then I'll share my slides here in just a second.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan James. I am with Boulder County as the Youth Transportation Program Specialist, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. And Ryan's going to be manning the chat and sharing some handouts and some links during the presentation. But don't worry, if you don't get a chance to download those or look at those during the presentation, we're going to follow up with all of the resources that we share and talk about today in an email to you all tomorrow. So you'll be able to get all the hard copy options that you're interested in at that point as well. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and we will get going. All right, can you all just confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see it, Cami.
Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Of course.
So welcome to Bike Trains. This is, as we said, it's an introduction training session. So this is not a full-blown how to do bike trains, but we definitely do offer that as kind of the next level after this session. So today we just really want to introduce you to the concept, introduce you to the resources that are available here in Boulder County through us, as well as some community partners, and really kind of answer those introduction questions that you might have about how big does this have to get, how small, how easy, how hard, is really just help you kind of get a feel for it as you're thinking through, is possibly implementing a bike train at my school or with my group or in my community. Does that make sense for us? Same thing with does it make sense for us to potentially pursue participating in bike, walk, and roll to school day in May? So we really want to use this as one of those, just get you more familiar with these two projects and how you can potentially consider implementing them without having to have, we know what we're doing yet figured out. So that's really the idea today, is really introduce you to these two great options. And there we go. And really just a little bit about the Youth Transportation Program. We are really here to sort of support local capacity, whether that's to improve upon existing capacity or just start you with some capacity at all, to really think through and support kind of the multimodal needs of youth and families across the county. As we often say, right, we have to get to it, whether that's a person, place, or thing, or whether that's a person, place, or thing, has to get to us. And that requires transportation, but it's not something that we think about as sort of a daily need. But it is for all of us some way, somehow, every day. So really looking at what do families and youth need to really thrive and get to where their key destinations are. That's what our program really likes to center on, is supporting our community kind of in thinking through what those needs are and how to address those needs and kind of build capacity around youth and family multimodal options. So today, this is sort of our brief agenda. The girl in the pink on this bike is definitely my spirit animal for bike trains. This is how I hope everyone feels. Excuse me, when they're riding their bikes. So she's adorable. But today we're going to talk through what are bike trains and what is bike and walk and roll to school day. What are the benefits of each of those things? Like, why would you want to consider participating in both or either? We'll walk through some kind of high-level implementation ideas just to get your juices flowing. As I mentioned earlier, again, around the resources that are available. And we should have plenty of time at the end to have some question and answer sessions. And you can always follow up with later and we can have private conversations. Happy to do that. So a definition of a bike train, what is it? And actually, Melissa and Sarah, I might ask you, have you ever heard of it before? And if you have, what is your understanding of what it is?
I haven't heard of it before.
Awesome. Good to know.
Yeah.
I think I have heard of it. It's been a while since I saw one in action, but it's basically exactly what it sounds like. Everyone rides like in a line together, like almost like a, I guess as if you're like caravanning across.
Perfect.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's great. And so, yeah, and bike train is not necessarily a term that everybody uses. So I think, Melissa, your explanation of it's basically kind of a small group or up to a large group that kind of rides together. And so the formal definition is an organized group of children and adults who bicycle ride together along an established route. Whether they call it a bike train or not, they don't have to. Sometimes it's called a bike bus. Sometimes it's called a cycle train. Sometimes it's called something completely different. But the concept is that there are adults riding with kids to ensure sort of safety at intersections and just comfortability sort of along the route. And that it becomes a little bit more formal than just kind of riding with your neighbor by habit, that is how often bike trains get started, is that there's a small group of people already riding together, and then they pick up one or two more kids, which could end up helping not only both families, but it gives those other additional kids some options to kind of get that activity before school or and have a trusted adult ride with them, which might make the parent feel better. So the formal definition is a group of children and adults who ride together along an established route, and then you are free to call it whatever you would like to call it. Ryan's going to share this in the chat, but there is a full toolkit on how to implement a bike train, which is called The Wheels on the Bike Go Round and Round, pictured here. We will make sure that you get the PDF version in the email tomorrow, as well as the website on where to find this toolkit if you're not already familiar with it. And as I mentioned before, we're not going to go through this entire toolkit today, but we wanted you to know that these free resources are there. And if your community or your school or your after school program, your before school program, your church group, wherever you kind of work with youth and adults and they gather, are interested and you'd like some support going through this full toolkit, we absolutely are here to do that with you. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that there was some free toolkits and resources out there to help you plan and kind of walk you through all of the steps and considerations you might want to think through before just launching a toolkit. And these are the chapters listed here as things to kind of think through initially. How do you get ready ahead of launching one? Kind of what do you need to do with sort of the parent volunteers or PTO or teachers, whoever's kind of helping organize it. How do you identify routes and what are things you want to look for when you're kind of identifying what an established route might be, how to kick off and promote your event and recruit participants, and as well as how to evaluate. So the toolkit gives you lots of ideas and can support you kind of step through getting to implementation. And again, here at the county, we're also available to help you walk through that process. And there are two, I guess, general ways to look at starting a bike train. If you're interested, one is a very informal group, right? And it just starts with a small group of parents who take turns biking with you. So as an example is, there might be a mom or a dad who always bikes with their kids already on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then those Monday, Wednesday, Friday, something else happens. But maybe that mom and dad who's already riding with their kids could invite some of those other kids to go along with them. And it's just 1 day a week, 2 days a week. It's not necessarily attached to the school or to the PTO, or people don't necessarily need to formally sign up for it, but it kind of organically happens and it just sort of builds throughout the community. A formal program is one that is more supported through the schools, either through an after-school program, a before-school program. There's probably a lead parent or lead volunteer who is keeping track of if there's more than one bike train, meaning more than one route that kids and parents are kind of coming from, where are they, and who are the kids that are expected to be in that bike train, so they can make sure that all the kids are getting to and from school without someone getting lost. Oops, excuse me, let me go back. They have that adult chaperone with them, and that they can take turns rotating potential adults who are attached to that group. And again, a lot of schools who have been doing this for years might have multiple bike train routes, and they end up like picking up kids along the way, and they call those train stops or bus stops along the way. And then other ones, it's more like literally there's 3 or 4 kids, we just go to their house, we wait for them on their driveway, and off we go. And we don't necessarily formalize those as train stops for other people to participate in. So you can kind of go in between a very informal structure to a very formal structure. And it kind of just depends on what's the readiness in your community and amongst the families that you are connected to and your school community potentially. And most formal programs developed out of being very informal at the beginning. They didn't necessarily start as a formal program, but there's plenty of examples across the country of where they started a formal program and it invited people to participate, and 1 or 2 routes just came up because there was a natural route, a natural occurrence of a lot of kids and adults already coming from certain directions on certain paths or on certain sidewalks, that it just made sense to formalize something because there was natural built-in potential participants. So neither one of these is better than the other, and both are options that we can happy to help support if you're interested. There are a number of benefits to consider. Why would you want to participate or maybe start a bike train, and why would it make a difference? So on the right-hand side here, these are a number of potential benefits. Is that really the more people that we get to walk or bike, it means that we have less people in cars, which can really improve traffic safety around the destination, which for today's purposes, we'll talk about as schools. It can increase the daily physical activity for those who are participating. So not only for the adults, but for kids. And physical activity has been linked to that readiness to learn and waking up our brain activity. So it really can support the whole school day if kids get some extra activity on their way to school instead of just hopping out into the car and running into the building. Like I said, the readiness to learn piece, as well as that mental health piece to just kind of deep breathe and get in some fresh air before school. We know there's lots of stressors and not only big people's lives, but little people's lives. And so having that opportunity to get some additional activity can not only help with their physical health, but also their mental health. Bike trains can often offer an additional transportation solutions to families that have always said, I would love for my child to be able to bike to school, but I can't go with them. Having bike train options, again, that they are able to join up with another adult and a smaller group of kids who are already doing, can provide families a transportation solution that they didn't have before. And then again, it can also potentially increase family and our community connection. Is those who have been participating in these types of programs often say, this is great because we've gotten to know our neighbors better. We now know more families and students that we didn't necessarily know who they were before, but because we've now all participate in the bike train, we now know each other. So it can kind of expand that community connection by participating in bike trains. Again, a cleaner environment. We kind of mentioned that we have fewer cars, so we have less emissions coming out of the cars, which definitely there is a brown cloud that can develop above a school at those kind of key pick up and drop off moments. So we're reducing the amount of cars contributing to sort of the air quality issues. Peace of mind for family, just knowing that there's other adults attached and walking with my kid might be all that a parent needs to have. It say, if I can't go with them in lieu of driving, as long as they're with that other adult, I'm okay with it. So again, kind of going back to it provides another transportation option, but can also give those parents a peace of mind that they're with other adults who they know are looking out for their child if they can't be along the route with them. It can help families save on gas and or money as far as wear and tear on their cars or any of the electrical options that might be going on, is that they're not using those more expensive transportation options. And then again, it's just fun for the kids. They get a chance to be social. And a lot of times those drives to school can be really stressful if you're late and all of that, and actually add to stress. So this is another way for kids to just not only get all that physical activity, the mental health benefits, the environmental health benefits, as it can just be a way for them to laugh and play and just smile more throughout the day. So that is sort of the summary of the benefits of kind of bike trains of why or any, and so bike trains have been started for a number of reasons. You might find one on the list we just talked about that makes sense to you, or you might think 10 of them make sense to you. So there's no right or wrong reason for why you need to start a bike train or the benefits, but if any of those benefits help you sort of angle with potential other parents or with the school administration to talk about why you're pitching starting one, please use any that makes sense for you and your community. Now, often bike trains go hand in hand with bike and roll to school day, which is why we paired them together today too. So any of you in attendance, have you heard of bike and roll to school day and or month before? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it once or twice.
Great. Was it something that, so it didn't necessarily exist when you were growing up, Melissa? Nothing you've ever participated in before or know anyone who's participated?
I don't, not when I was growing up, but it, like, the concept seems like it would be, like, it would make a lot of sense to have it.
Sure. And how about you, Sarah? And she may not be available at the moment. I'm not sure. No worries. Well, anyway, Bike and Roll to School Day is actually an international event, and it happens every first Wednesday every year in May. And locally in one of our school districts, in St. Vrain Valley School District, the first Wednesday of every month is a late start. So it often ends up not being a great day to honor and celebrate Bike and Roll to School Day. So we want to just let people know that you can participate in this Bike and Roll to School Day in our month any day in May. It's perfectly fine. You don't have to worry about if you can't plan something on May 3rd, then you don't have the opportunity to participate in it or do something fun in your school community. You can absolutely pick on any day in May that works better. It could be before, it could be after, there's no problem. And Ryan's going to share the link in the chat to the website. The picture below here on the left is what the current website homepage looks like. But at walkbiketoschool.org, there are lots and lots and lots of free planning and promotional materials. There's guides to say, hey, if you have 3 months to plan, here's what we kind of recommend you might do. Hey, if you have 1 week to plan, here's what we recommend you might do. But often, schools will use Bike and Roll to School Day in May as a way to introduce the concept of a bike train and try one out and sample it out. And so these can go nicely together, and then when there's sort of momentum and success around kind of the first try, that kind of leads schools into saying, hey, we could do this, let's do this more often the following school year. So this is why we're hosting this now in April, to kind of get you all thinking, does it make sense to potentially consider participating in Bike and Roll to School Day in May, and or is potentially looking at a bike train an option that we would like to consider for how we participate in Bike and Roll to School Day. By no means is starting a bike train the only way to participate in Bike and Roll to School Day. There's lots of other ideas. So we wanted to make sure that you knew kind of about both options as kind of upcoming things to consider for the spring and or to consider for the following school year. And then we also have resources and materials that we'll make sure that you know about, and we'll talk about that in a second. But just having a day to kind of bring awareness and attention to how often are we walking, or how often are we biking to school, or how often are we rolling. Could be all sorts of other, the scooters, the wheelchairs. Some kids still skate or have the skates on their shoes, whatever it might be, but just not driving in a car to school and to think about the benefits of that, whether it's a personal benefit or more of an environmental benefit. A lot of schools really enjoy participating in this day because it helps them meet not only safety goals for their schools, but they also have environmental kind of green goals, or they may have some physical activity goals. So participating in a bike and roll to school day, any day in May, might be a nice way to drum up a lot of attention school-wide and get a lot of people to participate and have a lot of fun. Because usually here in Colorado, May is pretty nice by then, the weather. Another activity that we have that we would love to support is we have a walk and bike and roll challenge. That these are free resources that you can download from our website. It's essentially a classroom-based chart that any teacher can print out. You can write all of your students' names on the left-hand side. And then throughout the entire month, whether it happens to be May or any month, you can keep track of how you got to school and mark whether you walked or biked or whatever it might, or rolled, and just add it up at the end of the month just for an awareness building. There doesn't have to be prizes associated with this activity. Some teachers really like the let's just do it as an awareness building activity without having an incentive, but you can always include an incentive if you want to. And one of the other things that is free and available is you can also download a certificate of participation and then put in your kids' names and give that out at the end of the month. So we just wanted to share that this is a free resource available to anyone at any time, but often these resources get activated around bike, walk and roll to school day, or walk, bike and roll to school day, sort of the opposite, which happens in the fall. So we will make sure that you know how to get access to these free materials. But again, you can activate these any month of the year, every month of the year, or only for May, if that's a nice, easy way to participate in walk and roll to school day, or bike and roll to school day, excuse me, in May. And I'm going to kind of close out our formal presentation, and we'll open it up to questions. As really, there are a number of additional free resources that haven't been mentioned already to really support you implementing these things in your community. As I mentioned at the beginning, our role, or one of our goals, is to really help build local capacity to do this kind of work. And we want to make sure that you are aware of all of the resources that are available for free to support you in doing this work. And so through Boulder County, we have this what's called the Safe Routes Regional Hub. And I've mentioned this top bucket already, is that we are available by request to help you implement the bike train toolkit. If that feels like a helpful member of your team, we're happy to be a part of that. We also have a Safe Routes lending library, and it's named that way because what we have is a bunch of educational safe walking, biking, and rolling, sorry for the acronym, but that's what the WBR stands for, walking, biking, and rolling items that you can borrow, check out, just like a book, just like a library. And then we also have some additional items that we might just be able to give you to keep, to hand out. There might be some safety reflective items or things like that, that if you tell us how many people you expect to participate, if we have enough, we're happy to share those with you so you can use them and hand things out. But as an example, specific to how we can support your bike train with resources, is for your adult leaders and volunteers, we have free reflective safety vests. We would love to give all of your leaders a way to be identifiable and also add an extra level of safety with a reflective vest. So if you need any of those, just let us know. We're happy to supply you with those. Also, for bike train participants, we also have reflective safety and educational items. They might be zipper pulls, they might be reflective shoelaces, they might be bike lights, but we want to make sure that the participants in your bike trains have as much safety gear as we can possibly provide. So we're happy to talk to you through those. Here's just some visual examples of what I've been talking about. Is we've got the adult size vests, the youth size vests are kind of in the middle there. So ultimately your bike train can kind of look like that bottom right picture, as everybody is as safe as possible and as identifiable as possible, as that this group is traveling together. In addition to that, the educational resources we have, some examples are some standing banners, which are sort of top right here, some tabletop banners. They're often in English and in Spanish. and they're free for you to borrow at your events, because we know purchasing these resources, it might just be out of the question with limited school budgets, of not $0 budgets to implement some of these things. So we want to make sure that we can help support your one-time events as much as possible, as well as potentially ongoing events. And then I have a slide for each school district about what they can do to support bike trains. So Boulder Valley School District is definitely a willing partner and would be happy to support. There's a number of bike trains already happening across I think the schools within Boulder Valley School District, but they are available through their transportation department. They have two safe routes to school coordinators who are more than willing to help you identify safe bike train routes. If you're not sure where to even start looking, they can help you with that. They can also help support the making of potential route maps. If you want to go so far as sort of formalizing a route and inviting people to participate, they can help support with making those maps, as well as any official forms. If you want people to officially register or kind of be in the loop, the school or the PTO or the volunteer organization wants to be in the loop, they can help with getting any necessary forms developed. Similarly, St. Vrain Valley School District, through their wellness coordinator, Teresa Spires, they can do the same things, help identify routes, help make maps, help with any official forms. But they also are trying to link these before and after school activities to the existing school wellness plans or existing school safety plans, as they see that these types of activities help support the policies that St. Vrain Wellness District policies, or the school district's wellness policies, excuse me. So that was sort of it for our formal introduction to what is a bike train and how walk and bike to school day or bike and walk to school day kind of can link together. They can be definitely independent kind of activities to consider, but they're definitely complementary activities that could go together. So here's my contact information, but now it's really just opening up to the rest of you to sort of think, what are the additional questions or thoughts that you have, and or of any of the resources we brought up, would you like to kind of dig into any of those more, whether it's the Walk and Bike to School Day website, or looking at the toolkit, or looking at our lending library. We're happy to use the remaining time to kind of dig into some of these available resources. So I'll stop talking and stop sharing and just kind of open it back up to the group for any kind of thoughts or ideas, questions.